Hello everyone, this is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of Cruel and Beautiful, I, the Dragon, Rabbit Hole, and King Dio. A really interesting little tidbit that I've been thinking about lately that I don't think anyone else has mentioned. I don't know if I myself have brought this up in a video, but I thought I really needed to take the time to talk about this. This is the first console generation to occur post-Gamergate. Now, this is something that I don't think anyone has really talked about at all, or what this might mean for the dynamics of the consumer versus game journalist. But we are now in an era where no one who knows anything about video games, who follows the culture, who follows blogs and journalists and developers and know who certain people are and follow people in the industry, no one worth their salt trust the gaming media in any reasonable capacity after Gamergate. Because Gamergate kind of exposed how corrupt these people are. They exposed how they network, how they push narratives, how they make stuff up, how they promote bad games in order to push an agenda, how they'll downplay success stories, how they'll make excuses for shitting on good games, how they'll politicize everything. Gamergate exposed a good chunk of that, and the narrative for a long time was that Gamergate failed. That Gamergate failed to accomplish anything of value. That it failed to really destroy the game journalism industry. That it failed to really amount to much of anything. But that was simple game journalist cope, because what ended up happening by the time The Last of Us Part 2 came out is that no one trusted the game journalism industry anymore. When you say that The Last of Us won more Game of the Year awards than any other game in history, that it's one of the highest rated games ever made, that it was super popular among critics, everyone rolls their eyes and moves on, right? The Last of Us Part 2 bombed. Death Stranding bombed. What's been slowly been happening ever since Gamergate is that people have slowly begun to realize that game journalists cannot be trusted to talk about video games. It's been a gradual process. It's been a slow process, but game journalists didn't do anything to reestablish trust in the community. In fact, all they've done over the past several years is just alienate their audience over and over and over again. Not just with The Last of Us Part 2, but with the way they've covered Nintendo content, with the way they've handled certain releases, the way they've covered certain developers, certain topics, certain ideas, certain genres even. It's all come to this point where no one in the community really takes these people seriously at all. They have lost all of their credibility. They have none left. People used to take it for granted that people who talked about video games professionally were fans of games, that they liked games, that they were into the community, that they were fans themselves. But now we understand that simply is not the case. We understand that these people are posers, that they're posturing, that they pretend to be enthusiastic about these products because that's their career, right? That's what they've fallen into, and they have to keep up the act all the time in every avenue, and they don't like it when people call them out on their shit. Whenever they try and promote something like The Last of Us 2 as being how should I put this? How did they used to say it? That it was oh yeah, it subverted your expectations. That it's progressive. People are starting to see those terms as red flags now. 10 years ago when Mass Effect came out, gamers allowed these people to refer to Mass Effect as being progressive and things like that. When Spec Ops: The Line came out, people allowed this shitty third-person shooter to be promoted as being a subversion of the genre that really exposed gamers as being violent, unhinged sociopaths, right? Like BioShock for its political commentary, right? Like people used to allow game journalists to push these narratives, but in 2021, like there's real pushback. There are real like negative feelings towards these kind of ideas and attitudes and just their behavior, right? And like all other forms of journalism, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get more extreme. And as it gets more extreme, you are going to see more and more people begin to push back against it. You are going to see more and more people just not paying attention to what game journalists put out at all. And as a result of that, what we're seeing now is people are responding more and more to what Nintendo is putting out rather than the other companies. Because what people didn't understand about Gamergate was that like this wasn't a conflict between SJWs and like the conservative gamership or whatever the fuck gamers called themselves, the Gamergaters. It was between Nintendo and PlayStation, because PlayStation was the company that traditionally relied on the gaming media to promote their games, to like pretend they were more technically sophisticated, that they had more going on, that they were higher quality, that they were intended for more mature audiences, that they had better platforming games, that they had better racing games. None of this was ever true, right? But it was promoted that way in gaming magazines in the 90s, and sort of like they sort of ran with it for years after that, like attacking every major Nintendo game as being obsolete or irrelevant, even though they were way higher quality than the competition. What's happened in the Switch generation is that since people are actually thinking critically and not paying attention to gaming journalists and actually buying certain games, this entire industry of propaganda is collapsing because no one is paying attention to it. Like, it doesn't matter that game journalists are giving stuff like The Last of Us Part 2 perfect scores, because people know that they can't rely on those numbers. They are no real indication of quality. And as a result of that, people are going to their friends, they are going to like other gamers, reliable sources. I don't want to say YouTubers, because they are just as corrupt and going down the same path, but like people are being a bit more careful about where they get game recommendations from. And as a result of that, Nintendo, its library of games, and its consoles in particular, are becoming more and more popular without game journalists propagandizing the population, the gaming population, as to what they should believe is like the superior, most popular gaming platform. Like post Gamergate, Switch was set up for success. Like, I find that really, really interesting, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about it.